back to my channel. Clara here, and as you can see by the title of today's episode, we're going to talk about relationships. Relationships. So starting out this channel, I remember thinking among the ideas that I had were like cooking, relationships were there, questions about me, what else? I had like a couple of ideas to like pitch. And starting out, I remember thinking, on the part of relationships, I don't think I have much to say. Like, I wouldn't say I have been in the dating pool for a while. Yeah, there's like a lot there. But I remember thinking, I don't have much to say about relationships. But when I looked around, I realized relationships are in every aspect of my life. Like relationships with God, relationships with my parents, relationships with my brothers, relationships with my friends, with my workmates. So I was like, you know what? I mean, I have a lot to say, so we're going to dig deep into this topic of today of relationships, and I'm going to divulge a little bit of information about the different kinds of relationships, how you should treat each relationship, what you need to do, what you don't need to do, and all those things like that. But before we get any further, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Like, I need that. We are almost actually at 200 subscribers, which is great. And I love that. I love that you continue to support and all that. So let's get into the topic of today. Relationship. So for me, I like to see relationships as a trifecta, triangle. At the tippy top, you have your relationship with God. On the other side is the relationship with yourself, and then on this other side there's a relationship between you and the entire world, with everyone else. And of course each of these relationships have various, they're multifaceted. Like they have relationships with, we're talking about relationships with other people, you have relationships with the general people, neighbors, relationships with your workmates, your friends, parents, and anybody else, in-laws, children. So I'll start with a relationship with God. I think my relationship with God, I wouldn't say, like most times when I go to church, especially like Pentecostal church, it's not even Pentecostal, but generally when we're praying in gatherings, and then you see people stomping their feet and speaking in languages, and you're like, okay, I don't know whether they're forging that, I don't know whether that is true, or I don't know. I feel like I have a very shallow relationship with God, but that's also a very shallow way of looking at a relationship with God. There's a tendency of people to think that when you like pray a gazillion times a day, you speak in tongues, like that you have the utmost relationship with God, which is entirely false. Okay, it's probably true, like but like I don't think there's a metric to judge a relationship with God, because the relationship with God is personal. I believe it's personal. How you interact with God, you read your Bible, you pray, and you don't only stop at just the actions of prayer and things like that, but you need to have faith, you need to do good, you need to be exemplary, not just stamping and stomping the feet in church, and then when you go out you are something else. So I think the relationship with God, it has very many aspects to it, and there's a tendency for people to judge and think they are maybe holier than thou because they do certain things at certain times. But I don't think that's true. But that is my relationship with God, and that is my opinion when it comes to that. And then on the other side, there's a relationship with yourself. Now, relationships with ourselves are not entirely taught in the beginning. Like, okay, that's my opinion. Like, I got to know that I needed to have a relationship with myself later on in my life. Prior to that, it was always just about relating with others. I remember when I started this journey of the relationship with myself, there was a pastor, and I was watching a video, and he was saying that the commandment of love your neighbor as you love yourself, it starts with loving yourself, then you're able to love others. So if you do not love, because you're supposed to love God, that one we've covered, but you're also supposed to love yourself, and then you'll be able to translate that love into others. Yeah. So I noticed that you have to love yourself. If you do not have that self-love, like that relationship, dead in the waters. Because I mean, what are you going to give that you do not have? So this takes me to the journey of self-discovery, self-awareness, self-healing, just empowering yourself, you know, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and after even knowing your strengths and weaknesses, working on each one of those. If you're probably good at maybe knitting, you're able to, like, you can monetize that and make a living out of that. Or if you know that you have a weakness of like procrastinating, you're able to get like information on how to like deal with that procrastination. If you're a bad timekeeper like myself, you're able to see how ways in which you can counter that. And that all starts with self-awareness, a relationship with yourself, and things like that. Some people have failed to grasp the aspect of being alone. Like, being alone is not necessarily being lonely. The people who are in relationships, like those intimate relationships, but they are lonely. So being alone is not like being single, is not necessarily being like lonely. And I learned this, the moment I learned this, it's like there was a lot of freedom that came with it, you know. So I'm able to like be alone, do the things I love, watch the movies I like, having a relationship with yourself in the physical, like going out and doing all those things, but also like doing the inner work, the healing. And that's not to say that when you do it, then you're like there, it's now you're clear cut, now you know what to do by yourself. No, because I realize you keep doing it over and over and over and over and over, and there's no ceiling to it. Go to the gym, you know, have personal goals, have a vision for yourself, work out ways in which you can do that, and all that starts with like inside. That's the relationship with yourself, the relationship with your money, relationship with God, relationship with others, all that ties into it. This journey is so important. I realize there are many people who move through life unaware of how they treat others. Okay, not even how they treat, but how they treat themselves. If you have negative self-talk, my dear, I don't think much of it will come from, like, you not be as productive. But when you're aware of who you are as a person, you're able to translate even that in other relationships. Which brings me to my last relationship, the relationship with others. We shall start with the relationship with just about anyone else, your neighbor. You need to have a cordial, courteous relationship, kindness, politeness, and that is it. Do not overstretch yourself when it comes to like relating with others. I mean, you do not have to overextend yourself. You just need to have just be cordial, polite. You greet people. I think greeting people is something that we underestimate, but I've actually been in that situation where I don't really greet people, but I realize it's nice to be cordial. Like, you meet someone, you say, oh, good morning, good evening, and things like that. Be polite, don't overextend yourself. Relationships with your parents, I think these are the most tricky relationships out there. Okay, I know there are others, but with your parents and your family, we do not get to choose and pick and choose our parents. It's by default. So you may have a very loving family, good for you, but you may have not so loving family. That's unfortunate, but I mean, that's the hand that you are dealt. Yeah. So you have to be cordial, be nice to them, and allow them, because I mean, they are always bound to be your parents. So you have to learn how to deal with them. I think in the element of parents, I kind of struggle with relationships with parents, because they are known to use their parent card all the time. Like, you haven't done this for me, but I'm your mother, you know? And you're like, I mean, it doesn't mean because you're my parent or you're like my brother, you need to, like, gives you the allowance to be toxic and funny, you know? There's a saying that blood is thicker than water. You know that saying? That saying is very misquoted. The true saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The actual meaning of that is that the blood of the covenant, that is a relationship that you have with someone, something that's binding, is thicker than the water of the womb, someone that you are related to. So please do not withstand toxic family members who are using that to keep you enslaved and, you know, in such relationships. So for me, that is my take. Like, if you are my relative, you're being like mean and really, really toxic, like, I will not like cut you off and like that. No. I'll just leave you. Like, I will avoid you at all costs. I will avoid you. Like, try to minimize. I'll like be cordial and when we meet, like, I can't greet you so that there's no bad blood, because again, family is there. Like, it's there. So you have to like deal with them. For example, like now we're going into the festive season. You're bound to meet auntie someone who is asking you about relationships all the time. Like, when are you getting married? Like, I'm tired of that question. So you have to deal with those people. But if they keep asking you, I mean, you clearly made it known that I don't want to be asked that question, and I'm uncomfortable when you keep asking me that question, but you keep bringing it up. So what I'll do is I'll avoid you. I mean, where I can. If you're in one room, I'll just always be in the other room, like somewhere. Or I'll directly come up and tell you and say, like, okay, maybe I'm not comfortable with you asking me that question all the time. Like, it makes me uncomfortable. So I'll address it with you, and of course in a nice way. Again, you want to move slowly on those, you know, as you're confronting people. And confrontation shouldn't always be like messy, you know, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and they're like throwing punches. But it can be, you sit down with them and just tell them and try and share. But you also need to know that person, you know. If you know that they are the type who do not take, they are so defensive and they don't like to hear other people's opinions, then maybe you may like to avoid them as opposed to confronting them. So you will deal with that situation accordingly. So when it comes to parents, I think that is a relationship. And to be honest, they are, if someone is toxic, like as a person, they are going to be a toxic parent, they're going to be a toxic friend, they're going to be a bad mother. Like that's going to bleed into all aspects of their life. So how you deal with that is you have to navigate, like you read the situation, then you're able to find a solution to that. Same that applies to the relationship with my brothers and with my relatives. Like, it's the same. If you are weird and funny and I don't feel comfortable, like there are people in whose presence I feel drained. Like, I will come and talk to them, and then by the end of it I'm like, okay, what was that? Like, I feel so tired, and not because like I've been like running or doing like something physical, but because their energy is just corrodes me. Like, it just takes me to another, you know. And what I do again is I try and avoid. If I can't avoid you, I don't show up in your life. Yeah, like I know it sounds weird, but that's how I do it. Like, I will just be the ghost in the room. Yeah, I speak less, I don't talk as much. And the reason as to why some people are like corrode is because sometimes it's not that they're being like overtly mean, but it's just like the conversation is always around them. It's about how many things they're doing. You know, the conversation is not reciprocal. So that is that. When it comes to relationships with your workmates, I have an 8 to 5. And I know how that feels. Like, prior to like this whole self-awareness thing, I always thought everyone I speak to is a friend. But my dear, not everyone is a friend. Your workmates are not your friends. That is the truth. Like, it's hard to, because you spend, I think, a majority of your lifetime at work, yeah? And there's a tendency to think that because you're dealing with each other all day long, that they're your friends. No, they're not. You're in there for your work, the bag, and then you leave. So they are not your friends. If they become your friends, great, you know, amazing. But at the biggest chunk of the time, they're not your friends. Do your work and leave. Be cordial, be polite, be kind. And sometimes it's hard because you see you're together all day long, yeah, and you're bound to like have maybe like some friction sometimes, because like you're not always going to be like Okay, it's always going to be kumbaya. No. Sometimes you're going to like have conflict, but it's about how you resolve the conflict. But the biggest bottom line is get your money out. That's all I can say about workmates, like your colleagues, people you work with. That is the kind of, like, that's how I do it. Yeah, and sometimes I get like the lines are blurred, and then I think they're like my friends, and then they do something and I'm like, oh, good, yeah, these are just my workmates, and that's it. So that's it for workmates. Then friends, relationships with friends. The relationships with friends, you know, because you have friends in all, I think, spheres of your life. There are friends you made way back when you were in school, friends you made in like high school, at campus, even those that you can make at work. There are even those that you make with the different things that you keep doing in life. Yeah. So when it comes to friends in general, I think for me, we just need to have the basic elements of I can trust you. There's loyalty. I mean, yeah, there's loyalty. There's empathy. You know, you understand me, I understand you. And then there is confidentiality. If I tell you like something about myself, I don't expect to find that story with a million of people that they now know everything that I've shared with you. So those are the basic. Okay, they're not basic, but like the foundation stands on all those. And one thing about friendship is it's reciprocal. Like I'm not going to give, and then you're like receiving. I mean, no, that's not a friendship. That sounds like a user, manipulator. That's not a friendship. It's reciprocal. You give me something, I give you something. Like that's how we coexist. And there's a tendency to think that giving is I know that story about giving, but no, it's two-way. Yeah, there is a duty on your part, and there is also something that you're receiving. Yeah, something that you'll be receiving from the other party. Friendship has to be intentional. I have to mean it that I'm your friend. It's not like, oh, now I find myself in a situation where I'm going to be a friend. No, it's intentional. And then, like I said earlier, it's good to know the true definition of a friend, because sometimes we mistake like people with whom we have fun with as friends, and people sometimes are just acquaintances. They're just colleagues. They're just I don't know, social people we find that are like friendly. They're just being friendly, and being friendly is not a friend. Doesn't mean you're a friend. Being friendly is just, like I said, cordial, polite, kind, just basic, yeah. But when there is an element of friendship, there is intentionality, it's reciprocal, and there are all those virtues and values that are embedded in it. So it's good to know who a friend is, so that you don't mix them up. One thing I have learned now that I'm applying in my life now is how to compartmentalize. Compartmentalizing is knowing that this person stays in this group and this person stays in that group. So if, for example, Paul is a friend of mine that I usually go out with, I mean, I will not expect him to do certain things. So if, for example, if he flexes on me, probably going to see another friend of ours, I will not be hurt about it, because I have been able to know that Paul stays in this group. Like that's how I now, that's how I move. When I know you as a friend in a certain category, I don't allow you to be a friend like I don't have expectations of you in all categories of my life. So I'll know when it's time for partying, this is the person that I'll go to. When it's time for being like emotional and like telling my actual deepest stories, maybe I'll share it with this other person, so that I avoid being disappointed, frustrated when the Paul, who is maybe like a person that I go out with, cannot like emotionally connect with me, and then I'm like tearing my hair out. I'm like, Paul just doesn't understand me. No, it's because Paul was just a friend for going out with, and that's just it, And I've learned to compartmentalize people, and it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. Yeah, so it means if I have you in a certain category, right, that's where I stop. Yeah, but it's a good thing because it lowers my expectations, on that person. Yeah, I'm able to manage my expectations of them, of myself also, and all that. Then I also want to talk about friendship struggles. I think there's a tendency to think that when you're someone's friend, you never like have those ups, because they're ups and downs. Just as you have the ups where you're like happy, there are also bound to be some downs, and the downs are where you probably have a disagreement, where one of you doesn't pull your weight, and maybe one is always like taking. So there is bound to be like those lows, but how you resolve the lows or the conflicts will depend on you, how you relate as people. When you're down, do you sit down and talk about it, or do you just zoom, cover up and be like, oh yeah, that never happened. Guess what? To blow up sometime in the future. Yeah, because you build the resentment over time, and then before you know it, it's the two of you or the three of you. If it's a group, you're no longer speaking. So it's about also how you resolve those conflicts. And this again also applies to other relationships, with your workmates, with your parents. Again, there's always bound to be friction somewhere. So how you resolve it will help you in terms of your relationship. I've been in the presence of certain people, and at the end of a conversation, I'm just like, first of all, I have a new perspective. Two, I feel empowered that when I'm talking to that person, and I have those particular, I can literally see those people in my mind. When I speak to them, I feel empowered, I feel like refreshed, re-energized. And then on the other hand, I have people with whom, when I speak to them, I feel drained, I feel depleted, I feel bad about myself because of the kind of conversation we are having. It's about them all the freaking time. So such a relationship will erode me. It's you telling me your stories about what went where you did it. No. That is not right. Then also, there's need for independence, even in friendship. I don't want you to be overly dependent on me, and I'm guilty of this. I think I've been codependent in some relationships, but for the most part, be independent. There's a certain friend of mine that when I think about, we're the types that we don't speak for like weeks on weeks, yeah? But when we get back in the rhythm, we are talking. Like, she won't remind me of that time when I didn't call her during the week. And I'm like, such is friendship. You need to be independent, because you're a whole person on your own, and I'm also a whole person on my own. So I don't want you to your life shouldn't now bleed into mine. Yeah? Like, it shouldn't be like, I didn't pick something for you, so you carry that. And no, you need to be independent, and I'm also independent. Like, it's always important. Codependency arises when you're trying to fix someone. So you're so much in their life that you're trying to correct every bit of their life, but at the same time, you cannot correct every bit of their life. So independence is very, very key. Like I said, friendship is two-way. It's a two-way street. If you're the type of person who is always asking for things from your friends, note that. And I think it's good to also be aware. Like these days, I catch myself when I'm talking to my close friends, and we are sharing, and it's a story about, maybe I'm talking about like my work, or something that's happening in my life, and I catch myself 90% of the time talking. Like I pull back, and I'm like, wait, I've not asked about them. How are they doing? It's good to find out, because sometimes someone is dealing with something, if they're your close friend, and because you're too busy talking about yourself and talking about things that are happening in your life, which is okay and which is normal, but you forget that they're also going through something. So it's good to, if they're truly your friend, it's good to pull back, ask them, how are they doing, what's going on in their lives, how can you maybe be of help in their lives. And yeah, so that is my take on that. And also, again, don't expect so much from them, because if you expect so much of people, that's the beginning of your downfall. People are who they are, yeah? they can only give you as much as they have given themselves. So if someone hasn't given themselves so much love, you can only give them as much as you can. If they can't, because if you try to cure that, then you become codependent, because you're trying to fix things in their lives, and which even they themselves can't. So you allow them the grace, you give them what you can, what you can't. Yeah, the element of honesty in friendship should be treated with a degree. You can't be entirely honest. People are who they are. Yeah, again, I've said that before. So I would advise from overly sharing. Overly sharing is not good in any. Keep some things to yourselves. The relationship with yourself, be honest, transparent, 100%. Be transparent with yourself. But with people, you'd like to keep some things to yourself. Don't share everything because they are your best friend. No, even with the intimate kinds of relationships, I realized that when you share so much, it comes back and bites you. Next time when you have a conflict or when you have something, guess what? They're going to pull up that card that you showed, yeah? And if it's a weak spot, I hate to be in your position. So I'm the type, I don't overly share. Okay, maybe. But I don't overly share. I share what I think that person deserves. And there are points where I have shared a lot with, for example, a social friend, and I'm like, oh goodness, I shouldn't have shared that with this person. But I am also sure that people are quick to forget. Yeah, they one ear out the other. So I treat that depending on the kind of relationship that we have. If we are close friends, yeah, maybe a lot more honest. And if we are just social friends, I may keep certain things to myself, and you'll be like, oh, I didn't know this thing about you, or I didn't know this thing about you. But it's because you're that kind of friend. Yeah, again, I said compartmentalization has worked for me a little. Like, it has helped me, lower my expectations with certain people, avoid maybe being overly drained by certain people because I know them, like that's how they are, that's who they are, and things. Lastly, relationships, with the intimate relationships. I think intimate relationships are, again, this was when the topic of relationships came up, my whole thing of relationships was just on intimate relationships. I am not a pro on this, and these days relationships go all kinds of ways. I even fear speaking on relationships because they are multifaceted. There's what. But I think relationships, the intimate kind of relationships are, and I think I'll have a separate video for these. I don't know if I can even speak on it, but they have those reciprocity, trust, loyalty, confidentiality, and for them they even have the intimate bit added to. They have that layer added to it. So you have open relationships, you have closed. So you just need to be clear, very clear, before you again compartmentalize expectations so that it helps you manage those expectations. So that's it for me in this episode. There's a lot that I could have said and wish I could say when it comes to relationships, because relationships are the basic fabric of communities. Without relationships, you stand alone. And again, when you stand alone, no man is an island. You really, really need people, whether you like it or not. So the quicker you learn how to deal with people, learn how to navigate the different kinds of relationships, the better for you with your life, and also creating an impact with other people. So thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.